The Phoenix Suns go down in the NBA Cup to none other than the Los Angeles Lakers. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, our instant reaction. We'll try not to shed any tears to the Phoenix Suns loss. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer over at sunstalk.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcasts. A big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen post-game. Even on a bad day like this, 106-103, the Los Angeles Lakers win the quarterfinals in the Western Conference for the NBA Cup. We're free and available everywhere, including YouTube, so hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're finding the show. Get a new show in your feed every single Monday through Friday from now through the rest of the season. Post-game, analysis, guests, interviews, all that good stuff every day just for you. Become an everydayer. Get locked onto the Suns right along with me all season long. More bonus content to get to, as I will let you know about throughout the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Let's get to the game. Brandon Dueñas is here as he is, well, not every Wednesday, but in this case, a Wednesday. And the perfect show to have a partner in crime for, I would say, both because I'm still making sense of what just happened, but also because it'd be a tough show to get through, talking about that game. Brandon, we're just going to react to the general everything, make sense of the calls that may or may not have been blown, the decisions that were made, which players stood out, and all that to start off the show. The moment of the game was the whole game in this case. And what I will kick us off by saying is the Suns very rarely get Suns fan Brendon to come out. It's hidden very, very deep in here because I, cover the team. I got to be on my P's and Q's on that stuff, and I'm very hardened to it. It was like 7 minutes left to go in this game, and nope, my wife was already asleep. The dog is in there with her. I'm out on the couch alone, and I literally said to myself, how in the hell are there still 7 minutes left in this game? It was that type of night. So what is your first takeaway, your first thought, your first emotion coming off of that game?
Well, first of all, it was a great game from an intensity standpoint. The players cared. Kudos to Silver for this tournament. I was very wrong about that. That being said, the way the game was officiated was one of the most inconsistent. I have not talked about officials all season long. I've stayed off that part of Twitter because it's a very dark place. I think the last time I've really gone deep was like the 2021 finals. So this is the first time I've really gone back to that mode, but that was ridiculous. Like just Durant getting mauled, multiple possessions. Like, look, it's one thing if both teams can play physical, but when you're calling it specifically for on one team, it just kind of, adds to the fuel. And the whole take foul thing, I actually looked up the rules because I saw some replies saying the last 2 minutes, that rule doesn't apply. So I know Suns fans don't want to hear that right now, but that was a good no call by them based off the rule book. So I did not know about that.
Okay, but the timeout. Let's just get to the timeout.
The timeout. That was unacceptable. You even had apparently Reggie Miller. I was watching the local broadcast, but even Reggie Miller was calling them out on that. So that's how you know it wasn't just a Suns thing. There's a lot of NBA players I know. I saw Mikal tweet about it. Tyrese Halliburton tweeted about it. And all the main replies under it were just talking about how ridiculous that was. So unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, Austin Reeves, who, credit where it's due, I guess, hits an absolutely insane shot. It's one of those where I'm not even sure why he took it. There were like 10 to 15 seconds left on the shot clock. He's in the right wing. LeBron does not touch the ball the entire possession. Makes it. Feels like the game's out of reach. and then ends up with the ball in his hands in the key moment on an inbound. I thought Book did a very good job not fouling, but pressuring, and then somehow, as Reeves is very clearly coughing up the ball, I don't know if LeBron called it. I saw some people speculating on that, or if it was Ham. Either way, there is a timeout called as the ball is like pressed up against his leg, and he does not have possession. It feels like the replay reviews we see of wide receivers making a catch, and it's like the referees, it's like the David Tyree catch or something, all over again. And except in this case, they get to stop the clock and reset and all that on top of it. So that one felt incredibly egregious. And if Reggie Miller is mad about it, I know Suns fans believe him to be the biggest Suns hater around. And I do think he tends to root for the big market teams, the Lakers, the Warriors, whatever, in a lot of these games. So if he was apoplectic, I was also watching the local broadcast. That makes it even more cemented. But, I mean, what did you think of this game? Setting that aside, because the take foul thing, I didn't necessarily know that either. I don't know the rule deeply enough to even know how something qualifies or doesn't, if I'm being honest. So that one didn't bother me as much because it just didn't occur to me the same way that it did some people. But I feel like you have to be pretty pleased with how this team responded in the second half. No matter how much they sucked in the first half, no matter how much you are angry at the referees, the Suns should have probably lost this game by 20. And I do think there's a lot of credit that needs to be due, especially to Kevin Durant, for this team even having a chance in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it showed that they got some fight in them. And, obviously the slow start, it seems like the Lakers have done a good job of making the Suns play ugly basketball. So you got to give them some credit for that too. But the beginning of the second half, they just looked like a completely different team. So I don't know what Frank Vogel said to them at halftime, but whatever he said, I would love to be in the locker room for that, because they came out with a completely different mindset right off the bat, got right back into it. I thought there's a couple moments they could have really put together a solid run and extended a lead, but it seemed like every time they're about to, build a small lead, it just got taken away, or some unfortunate sequence would happen where it'd be a 5-point swing in the Lakers' favor. And that just kind of kept happening over and over. And it was a battle, though. I think we saw two teams that just didn't want to lose. It was physical, pretty intense, playoff-like atmosphere. And, the other thing is the Lakers shot the ball 27 more times than the Suns.
Yeah.
Anytime that happens, it's going to be really tough to win. You're just fighting uphill. And 20 turnovers has a lot to do with that, the offensive rebounding. A lot of little things that they're going to need to correct. But yeah, it was a frustrating game. But at the same time, like you said, they fought their asses off. So you got to tip the cap to them for that.
Yeah, I think the other reason Suns fans are going to be upset about the officiating is not just those late game snafus, but you look at it and it's like, okay, and we're going to go through all four superstars and kind of look at the game that way. In the second segment, we'll talk about some of the possession game stats and the center play to close out the show. But the best players on the Suns were in foul trouble all night, and as was Nurkic. I mean, you can call him one of the best players or not, but he was also in that mix. And those were the two runs that stood out to me. There was the run, I believe the Suns cut it to 5. I think it was 45-40. And then right after that is when Nurkic had to sit. And I know he didn't have a great game, but in the first half, I thought him being able to even just grab some defensive rebounds was pretty big. And the Lakers went on a run right after that. Then there was the stretch, I think it was a 7-2 run right after Booker had to sit with foul trouble in the third quarter. And the Lakers extended their lead again, and those were huge. The other thing I would point to, as maybe we can transition to the star players off of this, but I do think if you're giving credit, if you're trying to find some positives here, LeBron was held in check down the stretch of this game. I tweeted, I don't know if you feel the same, but I tweeted like 3 to 5 minutes left, somewhere in that range. I was like, the Suns and Lakers have played the same game 3 times, because it just felt like LeBron was going to get downhill on Nurkic, draw fouls, get to the basket, whatever, over and over, like we saw the first 2 games. But The Suns started doubling LeBron before he could get into those drives. They forced the ball out of his hands. It was Reeves who ended up taking that big three to kind of ice the game. LeBron turned it over a couple times. They were able to get him into a miss at the basket without fouling. And so I think that's, at least for a, hey, we might play this team in the playoffs type of mental hurdle for this team, I'm sure that they feel pretty good about what they were able to do there. They're not going to maybe feel that right now in the locker room, but I do think that was a positive off of this one too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think anytime you turn the ball over 20 times too, and just all the little things that are very correctable mistakes, like shows that you could still compete with them in spite of all that, and an off shooting night from Booker as well. So I think there's a lot of things that kind of add up towards, you look at the numbers without even, checking the box score or whatever. Just if you just look at the actual, like, just physical numbers of turnovers, free throws, all these little things, they just add up, and you just can't have those types of differences and beat teams in close games. And like I said before, it was pretty much a playoff environment. So I think anytime the game slows down like that, that's when more of those weaknesses could be exposed in a sense. So we saw the Lakers really target Nurkic, even Gordon and Allen in some stretches, trying to get those two on the same side as Nurkic in a pick and roll. So those are some actions that I think the Suns will see a lot in the playoffs too. So it's definitely a good test. Obviously, not having Beal out there, you'd like to have him out there to get them those chemistry reps and that type of environment. But at the same time, it's good for the rest of these guys to play off Booker and Durant and play in a important, like, quote unquote, important game.
It felt important. That game, That was a playoff game.
It felt like it. It really did. So, but since they lost, it was just another regular season game. If they would have won, it would be the greatest.
Okay, that's fair.
Regular season game of all time. So
it didn't matter at all. There's nothing to it. Yeah, just because of the EL. That's fair. All right, let's pivot. Let's talk through Durant, Booker, Davis, and LeBron, and kind of look at the game through that lens next. First, today's show brought to you by eBay Motors, the best place to buy any car part for any part of your car. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd this season to bring you some of the best fantasy picks that he can come up with each week all season long. Under the radar, just what you need, perfect fit for your roster. So whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we'll provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Patrick Williams, the Bulls are a nightmare, but that doesn't mean that they're not still playing games, and he is back in the starting lineup. Trade's coming. Maybe get him on the roster now. Obi Toppin shooting the lights out. The Pacers have a great schedule. They're obviously playing in the in-season tournament, and he is a big part of their team more and more as the season goes on. Kelly Oubre Jr. back from whatever weird situation happened with the car, healthy, playing, had a great start to the season. He's back in there. Derek Lively, a starting center who might be available in your league. And Killian Hayes, once again starting. Monty Williams, our good friend, loves him some Killian Hayes. Steals, shooting, assists, all that good stuff. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball can help you win your fantasy championship. eBay Motors knows the championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, and it's the same with your vehicle. I've told you countless times I love eBay Motors. I've used them. This is not just me shilling. This is real stuff. I have bought a hubcap, basically, a wheel cover. I have bought a sort of, what is it called? The flap that protects your eyes from the sun. I mean, in Arizona, that's all I think of it as. I know it has a mirror and all that too. Weird little parts that don't pop up anywhere else, that aren't available anywhere else, but eBay has them. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays rolling smoothly. Whether it's a brake kit, LED headlight, roof rack, bumper, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, with these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Okay, Brandon, let's go to the stars. And in the spirit of positivity to open us up here, I want to start with Kevin Durant. However, before we get to Durant, I want to remind everybody, last week's Locked On Suns Insider video breakdown was about Kevin Durant. It was like 18 minutes of deep dive Kevin Durant talk, a bunch of matchup specific details against the Lakers and how his offensive role with this team and his fit with these players has evolved over the course of the season. We saw a lot of what they were able to attack tonight in those first two matchups, how they manipulated Anthony Davis and more. So if you want videos like that each week delivered straight to your phone with exclusive link, my reaction to Suns news, game day content, one-on-one conversations, giveaways, Q&As, all that good stuff. Join the Locked On Suns Insiders by visiting joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSuns or click the link in the show description. That's joinsubtext.com or click that link down below. All right, Brandon, let's talk about Durant. I'll give you the floor. I thought that this was my favorite Kevin Durant game as a Sun. Just because of the level of difficulty, playing through the ankle sprain, and evolving against a team that he struggled against earlier in the season. I thought this was just like exactly why you acquire a player like this, because he showed up in this moment.
100%. He was unreal. He had some really tough shots with pretty much wearing the defense. Like, it just shows, that release point is so high. There's just nothing you could do about it when he gets to his spot. And the Lakers, they made it difficult for him to get to his spot, but he still got there more often than not. The one thing I think they did a good job of is limiting him to only 17 shot attempts. You'd like Durant in a game like this to get up 20 plus, but that's just kind of the flow of the game. Him not trying to force it too much. He did have 5 turnovers.
And all the turnovers. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he had 5. Book had 7, I believe, and those two combining for 12 turnovers to 10 assists. Like, that's not a great ratio. It doesn't matter who you're playing. Then you factor in all the offensive rebounds. It's just, recipe for disaster. But I thought, like I said, Durant was awesome. This is why you make that trade. I love Mikel and Cam. I'm not attached to the picks, even though I'm a draft guy. But look, you make that trade 10 times out of 10. And tonight was exactly why. Even though they lost, like, come playoff time, he's a cheat code. And just, I'm not going to take a single minute he plays on the Suns for granted. And I think some of the stuff he does, maybe I don't think everyone's used to it at this point, but it seems like there's times where Suns fans could almost take it for granted because it's not normal. Kind of like what we're seeing with LeBron, his age, like, just these aging stars are just unreal. It's crazy that these guys are still doing this.
It is, and we'll pivot to LeBron next, I think, and then finish off with Booker and Davis. But one other point on Durant, I guess, to address here would be, did you have an issue with, or what were your thoughts on the shot that he took late in the game when they were down 3 and he took kind of an early clock 3 off of a quick pass from Booker? I didn't see a lot of chatter, but I think, if you were to go back and rewatch the game, maybe you could convince yourself, hey, take a more patient approach in that possession. But it's Kevin Durant on a pretty open 3 in rhythm. I personally did not have an issue with it, but what did you think?
Yeah, I'll live by that and die by that. Like, that's, if he's probably the only guy that could take that shot and you're fine with it. He was feeling confident. He was hot. So he's the guy you want taking that shot. If he misses it, you go down with him. I'd rather that than a contested. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus here. Just some other shot, we'll say. But yeah, I think, between that and the Reeves 3, like, I'll live with that as well. I'd rather have him taking a shot than LeBron attacking the rim or Davis attacking the rim. So to me, it's just, those are the shots that make it or break it. And that's what kind of league it is.
Absolutely. I see it the same way. I think that's a good jumping off point for LeBron. I agree with you 100%. I don't take Durant being here for granted. I also don't take Durant for granted, period. Playing 39 minutes at age 35 and doing this. And you could say the same about LeBron. We've gotten 3 regular season classics from these guys in the course of 6 weeks of one NBA season after not getting it for 5 years. I know Suns fans probably don't want to sit there and go, wow, what a special moment right now after that loss, but it's incredibly cool that these guys are still doing this and able to entertain us, give us these moments. And I do still think the Suns played better. This was their best defensive performance against LeBron in a fourth quarter of all these matchups, but that's not saying much when he still has close to a 30-point triple-double, 5 steals, a bunch of vintage moments. What stood out to you about LeBron's night?
Yeah, he was playing with a little bit of a chip on our shoulder. I think this Lakers team remembers that the Suns beat them double digits straight times in a row at one point, with ever since the Jay Crowder salsa. Like, there's still bad blood. It's a different team, but I think LeBron, he's going to get up for any big game. That's just who he is. But I think with that factored in as well, there's a couple times where I thought there's a fast break and Booker kind of bumped into him, got a steal, and he got a no call, and he just kind of put his head down. He's like, shook his head. He's like, all right. And then the very next possession, he goes right at the rim and finishes and overbook and goes and flexes on the bench. So those are the kind of plays that he makes time and time again. And it's just at this point, it's par for the course for LeBron. And at age 400, it doesn't matter. He's just going to keep going. So fortunate that he had a great game against the Suns, but that's just the reality. And the Suns are going to struggle, I think, to contain LeBron, and just about any team in the league will once he makes up his mind going downhill.
Yeah, you mentioned that Crowder moment. I thought he was maybe done after that series. That was 2.5 years ago. I was like, all right, it comes for everybody. He looked mortal. Like, we know Mikal can't guard him, but he didn't look great, and all right, maybe that's that. He'll be good but not great for the rest of his career, and now here we are. But all right, Anthony Davis had a really strong first quarter, petered out in the second half, I would say, and was not efficient tonight, but was a big part of them owning the offensive glass. I don't have any huge thoughts about Davis outside of what I mentioned before, which is that I think stationing Nurkic as more of a perimeter playmaker, Durant kind of having the stop and go awareness of where AD is, those reps of playing them so many times early in the season, that all jumped through to me. But I mean, to me, it was kind of the type of AD game that I expect. I don't think it was anything outside the ordinary.
Yeah, he had 9 offensive rebounds. Want to take a guess how many the Suns had as a team?
Probably less than that would be my guess.
They had 8. So he out offensive rebounded the Suns by himself. That's definitely what I think his value was, and it hurt.
They were so intimidated by it. Those tap outs where they kept trying to just hit them, they were so in their head because he was so aggressive inside, getting his hand on those, jumping, boxing out, doing whatever. So, yeah, it made a huge impact, not just when he was getting them, but on every moment of the game from that first start on.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the major reason they had that combined with the turnovers is why the Lakers had 102 shots, the Suns had 75. It's just 27 more shots. I don't think – I would have to go check. I need like ESPN stats and info for this one. But, like, has a team ever won a game getting outshot by 25 plus shots? Like, the Suns might have been one of the first or one of the very few to do that. I mean, it's just difficult to win when that happens. But yeah, Davis was aggressive early on, getting to the free throw line, setting the tone, and then I think kind of floundered off a little bit towards the end, settled for jumpers, which is kind of what you want him to do. But yeah, just pretty much just a standard AD game, really.
Yeah, and I think he was a contributor to a lot of those turnovers, even if he didn't get credited with any steals. And somebody on Twitter was pointed it out, and I noticed it as well in my replies. But they were not very smart, the Suns, about avoiding him in the pick and roll. Like, you saw Golden State do that a ton in the playoffs last year, where they went out of their way to say whoever AD is guarding, we're basically going to put him on an island. Then the Lakers adjusted and actually had him guard lesser players who were more likely to screen, or better players who were more likely to screen, whatever, solely so that he could be involved, switch on to Curry, be closer to the basket. That whole chess match was a huge part of their playoffs. I feel like the Suns just didn't even have a plan for that. They were like, yeah, we'll do our thing. And it's like, no, you can't do that. He's one of the most game-changing defensive players in the league. You have to have a game plan for that. Maybe they had one and just didn't execute it well, but it was pretty obvious. Let's close with Booker, who was the culprit in a lot of those turnovers. 7 for him. And my big takeaway on this one, Brandon, is just that this type of game is why for most of basketball history, the best scorer and the best playmaker were thought of as different players. Like, it is very, very hard to do both things at an incredibly high level. That is why Bradley Beal is on this team, and you can get mad at Booker for struggling when the defensive pressure is what it is, for having a lot of these high turnover games. I hear that. I have had those panic moments, but it's a lot to ask of a player to drive into the teeth of one of the most physical defenses in the NBA, to get shots for himself and his teammates, and be efficient, and have his head on a swivel, and not get tired, and all these things. I just think this game kind of took everything out of him, and he didn't. I think the box score is probably a little worse than his actual performance was, but he still wasn't good enough.
Yeah, no, it was a rough start too. Like, I think just there's a point where after that first stint, I thought he did okay. The second stint, he came in towards the end of the first, and that's when it looked like he just got kind of frustrated at little things, and that just reminded me of like young Book, where he just sometimes let things snowball and just get in his head a little bit. Because I tweeted this, there's a difference between like an angry Devin Booker and a frustrated, and he was more frustrated tonight than angry, and that's just controlling that. I thought just kind of threw his rhythm off. Just same with Nurkic getting into early foul trouble. I thought that really messed with him. He just couldn't really find a rhythm offensively, and was forcing up some stuff and just second guessing himself. So there's a lot of that going on in the first half. I thought that just really made for some stagnant offense all around. So yeah, Booker definitely, he'll probably try to forget this one quick, but it's a 82 game season. It's you just got to throw in the rear view and just keep plugging away, because we've seen what he's capable of already. There's going to be games he'll struggle like this, but I'm looking forward to see how he bounces back.
Yeah, it didn't help that Cam Reddish was defending him like a young cornerback who keeps getting called for pass interference or something. Like, it was just
horse collars, yeah,
just crazy. So I'm sure that didn't help. That was very clearly in Reddish's little carefully printed out game plan that they all get on their locker room chairs before the game, and it was just like, bludgeon Book. Like, that was kind of the deal, and it's hard to deal with. He did get frustrated. I had the same thought. There was one moment where I think he had a frustration foul at one point that it did bring me back to a couple years ago. I thought he had turned the corner on those. Look, nobody's perfect, but you can't have those moments, especially when you're in foul trouble already for actual plays. But yeah, flush that one. Sucks that it came in this moment. The Lakers clearly wanted this. They were at home. Move on. We can move on as well. We will bring you the second or third iteration of the Nurk Report. Credit to a listener for that title, as well as some numbers behind the possession game for our box score oddity of the night. We'll do all that next. First, today's show brought to you by Gametime, the best place to buy a ticket for any event, because Gametime basically took the feedback of all the things we all hate about other ticketing apps and said, let's fix them all. And they did. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event, whether that's sports, music, comedy, theater, or anything else. And Gametime gives you the peace of mind to not have to worry. Whether it's a show at the Tempe Improv, or it is a Suns game, or it is any of the major concerts coming next year. We missed out on the Smashing Pumpkins tickets. I was a little bummed. Gametime has them, still not in my price range, but they're there. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. That's the bottom line. They have exclusive flash deals. They have zone deals where you can pick the section, and Gametime gives you the seats for a better deal, more savings. They also have the Gametime guarantee, meaning if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference to make up for their mistake. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, quicker segment to wrap us up here. Let's talk Nurkic, the center rotation overall, Brandon, the Nurk Report, as we call it here to close out shows on these post-game episodes. Again, I thought Nurk in the first half was fine. Maybe that's a little too nice, but I thought he was one of the only things keeping the Suns from making the mistakes that they were making, which were allowing rebounds and turning the ball over. Nurkic had 8 rebounds. He only turned the ball over twice. I thought, again, he was part of the game plan of how to get Davis away from the action, and he was pretty good doing that, making the right read as a playmaker. But in the second half, not so good. Got into foul trouble, couldn't really do much against LeBron. And we can just add Drew Eubanks in here too, who I thought had maybe his worst game as a Sun. Just really did not contribute anything, made a lot of mistakes, was not aggressive as a scorer at all on offense to me, and was part of the turnover and rebounding issues himself. So are you panicking based on this game? Does this feel like a worst case scenario to you? Or how do you think about how the Suns centers performed in a game that, is a measuring stick game for the Suns?
I think it just kind of confirms what my fears were entering the season about him in these environments. I don't think he was a disaster by any means or anything like that, but I think there's definitely some, when a team's going to be hunting your anchor over and over, it's just that's definitely a red flag. And I think that this was a great example of why they need a third center on this roster, like a third legitimate center that they can throw. And Bismack, he's doing things over in Memphis that they could use in short spurts, but just a player like that I think, when Eubanks doesn't have it going, because I thought he really struggled tonight too, that, you could just toss in there. So yeah, for me, they just looked small. They looked, they were less physical, and the early fouls on Nurkic, I thought, kind of threw him, like I said earlier, just kind of out of his rhythm offensively. He just didn't really have that confidence we've seen in some other games. Like I'm saying all this now, but he's looked great for this recent stretch offensively. Looked super confident, and then
he's been
today
good.
Was just kind of today was just kind of regressing back to what Blazers fans have kind of told us, and what just his whole career has been, where he'll have stretches where he looks incredible, and then it'll kind of fizzle out, and there's the concerns started to boil over a little bit. So overall, it wasn't a disaster, like I said, but it was definitely some room for concern, and just confirming what I think we all kind of knew entering the season.
All right. I will just go through for our box score oddity some of the possession stats, and we can just start with the center spot. Drew Eubanks did not grab a single defensive rebound tonight. That could be the one you point to. The Suns turned the ball over 20 times. The Lakers had 54 points in the paint to just 44 for the Suns. Free throws were fairly equal. Suns actually technically had more fast break points, but the Lakers had more points off turnovers in general. A lot of this evened out in the second half, but what do you think was the biggest culprit for, I guess you've sort of given us your hint in terms of that field goal attempt discrepancy, but what do you think was the biggest reason that all happened the way that it did? Because if that's even close to equal on any of the categories that I just read off, we're talking about a 3-point game, that might be the difference between a Suns win and a Suns loss.
Yeah, for me, it's absolutely turnovers, just the lazy passes too. It's not like, yes, the Lakers generated some turnovers with their pressure, and I thought they did some creative things defensively that you credit them for those turnovers, but I'm just talking about the lazy passes that are just completely preventable, that are just basically unforced. And to me, it's been kind of a common theme this season at an alarming rate. Like, it's just it's got to stop. Like, you can't win games throwing away possessions like that. You just can't. And you could beat some lesser teams doing that and get away with it just because of your talent and how efficient you could be offensively and all that. But in close games, it's going to come back to bite you. And tonight was a great reminder that, we got to stop with the careless passes. And I don't know if it's fatigue. I don't know if it's just, what it is, but it's happening a little bit too frequent for me.
Yeah, there was a very big case of the drops from Booker tonight. It was reminiscent of some of his worst moments, whether that's the Mavs series or whatever you want to point to. It felt like that at times, where it's just like some defensive pressure, but also just, getting in his head. There was a moment where I think at the end of that first quarter where you were mentioning, where I was like, they just need to get the ball out of Booker's hands whenever he checks back in. Then he ends up starting the second quarter with still no Durant. It didn't really get better from there. There was the one that Durant got on Little about, where Little waited for Reddish to catch up to KD for a post-up, and then Little threw the pass, and that was a turnover. I mentioned Eubanks, where it just feels like he's so unconfident when he's in traffic, even as a dribble handoff guy or looking to reset the offense. He has to just completely bail on a possession before he's comfortable getting rid of the ball or making any sort of decision, and then that's going to inevitably lead to some mistakes if he has to dribble his way out or teams just read it and knock it out of his hands. So he had 3. That's just a sampling, but I think you're absolutely right. Especially in the first half, if they're even a little bit more careful, because they shot better than 50% from the field in that first half. Like their offense was working when they actually were running offense. Just they weren't able to do that. So that's probably the story of the game. I think you're right. Yeah, I think we get everything. That'll wrap us up for today. Long episode, late episode, sad episode, but a very fun game.
Shout out Grayson Allen. We didn't touch on
it.
He had a great game. He had a great game. I got to give him some props. I thought he did a great job of keeping them afloat when Booker was struggling. And the early second half run he went on was awesome. So shout out to Grayson Allen. I feel like we have to at least throw that in there before we wrap it up.
Finish that start of the second half breakaway dunk too that I feel like kind of just ignited everybody. He just seems so unfazed. Like it's hard for him to be rattled. He's confident even when they're down 20, and he'll be the guy that kind of gets a run going a lot of the time, it feels like. So, yes, absolutely shout out to Grayson Allen for his play tonight and that mentality all season long, but wasn't enough tonight, unfortunately. 106-103 loss. The NBA gets Zion and LeBron. I don't think Zion really matters anymore. I think KD would have been just fine. Booker would have been just fine, but the Suns will host the Kings on Friday instead of going to Vegas. That's all right. We will be back tomorrow. I was planning to preview the semifinal game, but we will not be doing that, so we'll see what happens the rest of the week. Hit follow, hit subscribe. Don't forget to sign up for Locked On Suns Insider text alerts to get a video breakdown. I'm hoping to focus on the good and bad of Nurkic for this week's video, so you'll get that, plus my reaction to news, game day insights, and more all season long. You can catch Brandon's writing over at Bright Side of the Sun, and I'll catch you guys next time.